That in San Diego, which is that's the downtown 92101, the Embarcadero. Picture was taken from the Sheraton Airport Hotel by me a couple of years ago. With us today, Jay Sternberg in Houston, but we were just reminiscing about the greater Boston area. We're both originally from, but we didn't know each other there. We met in Texas. And Dianne Devitt in Chicago today. And getting to know each other and talking about destination management and recruitment and relo and people advisory services. Jay Sternberg just recently retired successfully as a senior partner within Ernst & Young People Advisory Services.
Yes, sir.
Today's show is about meeting management and the unit that working name right now is Global Business IQ, upskill and reskill. And Dianne is an expert at meetings and management for many years, and as a professor of media related things, which of course meetings and management is within that group, global business meets and greets. And here we are meeting and greeting electronically, but someday we're going to do more in-person meetings again. And we've done about 300 meetings live until COVID crashed into my business in March of 2020. And that's when I began doing the global meeting room, in other words, electronically through Zoom, and now my YouTube channel. So more than 1,100 broadcasts productions have been produced by me and distributed and are all visible on the YouTube channel. It's free access 24/7. Dianne, the stage is yours. Let's talk about the IQ, the IQ certificate, the SMART, the gold certificate that you have in mind.
Uh, Thank you. I thought you were going to say my IQ, and that would have been a very short show. But anyway, so Ed, as you mentioned, I'm involved with the industry, meetings and events industry I was one of the originals, so basically involved nearly 40 years, and especially since COVID saw a dearth in both businesses and in the industry of staff who were trained to expedite and to execute deliberately planned meetings and events. And that's the term that we use in the business, is deliberately planned. Jay, you would never have just said to your ad agency, run an ad without knowing the details.
Definitively not.
Exactly. But how many people in business are tasked with planning meetings and events, plan the meeting, and don't understand the process that goes behind it. So
Or what the risks are.
or what the risks are, or how much money is left on the table, or reputation damage, and just diminished results. So and on and on and on. And I think so. I become really passionate about this topic and getting the word out to people, and bringing an awareness to what some might think might be, oh, what's involved with that? But then when you realize the implications and the risk, it puts a new light on understanding it. And the other thing is that, yes, I was a professor at New York University for 35 years and written cover stories on this topic, so it's nothing new. But there's a divide right now in business all over the world of those universities who support teaching meetings and events in the business schools. And I'm talking Sloan and Stern, and I don't mind mentioning them because why not? They don't teach this. And yet the people who are studying business and are going out running major global companies never had that one elective about this $1 billion industry that affects tourism, hospitality, and the revenue of every destination in the world. Never mind a business outcome. And so I think when you approach this topic from that perspective and you say, gee, maybe it's time for this awareness. Now, there are universities that acknowledge business and events as the business of meetings and events in their curriculum. So you might have a master's program that you can share it with, but I would say the majority don't. So that's part of this show, Ed, is to educate your audience, the management, people who are on this call who are responsible for budgets and for planning meetings, as to just maybe different topics and different viewpoints, so that when things come up, there's a better understanding from a high level perspective.
So I just want to get the audience lined up, aligned with what the three of us experienced along with others just about a week or 10 days ago on this program, uh, when we introduced the idea of what you're doing, what your big plan is. And I mentioned at the time, and I'm going to mention right now in 30 seconds, here in downtown San Diego, right behind me is the business area, though some of those buildings are high-rise condos and apartment towers. And you see that vertical red light on that building there? Going that way is Seaport Village, which is right adjacent to where I am sitting right now, and the tourist entertainment district, in other words, the convention center, and the Hyatt, and the Hilton, and Marriott, and others, Gaslamp District, all in the same area. Just as an example, just before the 4th of July weekend, the the international association called SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management, held its annual meeting here in downtown San Diego at the convention center. I was fortunate to be given a press pass for the 21st year, and I took it and did some work for them. More about that another time. However, there were 27,000 people, according to Sharma, that registered for this convention, including the exhibitors. And it was pretty busy, and just loads of good contacts were developed. And the planning to manage all of that and coordinate it and keep it safe and sane and efficient and effective is immense. Uh, and then just about a month ago today, this Hollywood-based Comic-Con convention came. Again, this is like umpteenth year they've been doing this, but this one attracted more than 100,000 into downtown San Diego. Every hotel was booked. They had exhibits. They had people walking around in the streets. The streets were loaded. The convention hall was nonstop. The convention hotels and the bars were booming. The Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitors Bureau said that the Comic-Con dumped more than 100 million in cash into the city as a result of all of that. That takes professionalism. And that's exactly what you're talking about here.
Yes, it is. And someone was ultimately responsible for that with a team, but that someone, there was one person ultimately responsible for the logistics and execution of that event.
Now, the leadership of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, or the hotels, the big hotels, they have somebody that you told me about who judges the value, the bean counter.
Well, Well,
The
yes.
analyst about what's the value of this convention?
Yeah, yes, that actually has more to do on the hotel end.
Yeah.
But you know, you brought up the concept of a CVB, Convention Visitors Bureau. Most of them have they're now they're marketing agencies for a destination. So, for example, in New York, it's NYC and Company. In Chicago, it's Choose Chicago. They have different names for that, but they play a pivotal role in the huge, what we call a citywide event like SHRM, 27,000 people. You've pretty much taken over the better part of the downtown area. And these agencies, they have members. They obviously know their destinations. So when SHRM comes into San Diego, and by the way, they probably booked this meeting, I would venture to say at least 5 or 6 years ago, because that leads us into today's topic in a way of where, you know, this is booked. Because when you have 27,000 people and you know the format and the agenda that you have to follow, there's only certain destinations and properties who can handle things like that. It'd be like, oh, I'm going to take a ride up to the country. Well, I'm not going to go on a bicycle. I'm going to use a car. And so you need to find the right fit. And when you deal with different types of meetings and events that have certain criteria and demands with them, the choices get narrower and narrower, right? So getting back to the CVBs, they're sort of the intermediary sometimes. They work with, and this is a good point too, they work with uh, entities that are called housing bureaus. And these housing bureaus are the clearinghouses of, gee, you have 27,000 people. We need to find 6 to 8 properties or hotels that can accommodate this demand. And so their job then is to work with the planner, work with the client, work with the destination, work with all the hotels in setting up this registration system. It's an immense responsibility.
I can add a little bit to that, Diane. In the US, we're not talking about a lot of locations that can house 27,000 people. The reality is it's probably less than 10, right?
Without a doubt.
Right.
Without a doubt.
And so I think that's a big part of when you plan an event like this is how many individuals you're going to have and what's the venue going to serve. In other words, do you need meeting rooms to house certain individuals? Are you going to have one concert hall that's going to be able to service the Comic-Con individuals? How are you going to be able to keep individuals busy when they're not attending specific conference events?
Right.
The obvious ones, Las Vegas, you got Miami, Boston, Chicago can handle it, but that's pretty much, I mean, when you start getting down to it, there's not a lot after that can handle that immense conference. On the business side, you got to figure out what's the takeaway. What are people going to gain from the venue and experience beyond just the business aspect of it? And how are you going to develop those workshops that are going to build on each other and not take 20 minutes to get from location A to location B? So there's a lot that goes into logistics besides just who's going to attend, what am I going to have for speaking, etc.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the thing is, you're exactly right. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. In other words, there aren't more than 10. And so that's why, and so very often, and again, in the initial qualifying and clarifying process, when you say, where can this be? The professional planner knows what the portfolio is already and knows what the choices are, just based on exactly what you said. And so then there comes, well, where are all the attendees coming from? You see, and so if this is a global meeting and people are coming from around the world, is it fair to only have something on the West Coast? So then the planner will say, well, geez, we have to have a pattern where maybe every other year we're East Coast, West Coast to accommodate the world.
Not to
And the
mention
people,
when you need visas or you need work permits to be able to get in, and the United States is not getting any easier.
no, exactly. So basically, yes, so all of the above. And I'll give you certain examples. Like, for example, um, Black and Decker, I used to work with, and any company like that. But one of their requirements at the time was we had to take over and use properties that had parking garages in the hotel, because they did a children's program, Learn on Location, for teens on how to use tools. So we had to buy out the whole hotel, including the parking revenue that went with that for the few days that it was held, so that they could set up their Learn on Location for the local. And I'm paraphrasing this because it was a while ago, but you get the point. Is when you're the person, you're the person I'm responsible to reporting to, Jay, and you say find a location. So this all goes back, and Ed was teasing me about when I mentioned it's quite simple, Ed. You just have to start with the W's. You have to start with just basics, and I'm speaking for every planner in the world right now, that is Simon Sinek put the word why on the map in terms of why. But before Simon, I hate to say it, and I know I love Simon, but before that, we were asking why for a very long time.
Mhm.
And why should, as I teach my students, why should be a very simple definition. Why? Well, there's an anniversary, there's a celebration, there's a town hall to get new messages out. There's whatever the reason is, copious reasons that you would hold a meeting, an event, or plan a meeting, an event. But I tend to focus on the what from there. And the what to me is really getting to the critical point of what needs to be accomplished. Not only the obvious objectives that you and your team, your stakeholders will see, but as we mentioned, what is that behind the scenes personal objective that you have, that you want to see accomplished? And the reason that you want to identify those bullet points, and I don't leave your office without 3 to 5 of them, is because that's what can be used to measure the success of the event and the investment on. So when those are accomplished, then we can have some, metrics for ROI at the end.
Totally agree with you.
Right.
I would argue, since you mentioned Simon Sinek, I would argue the what's the purpose of the event? It reminds me of his golden circle.
Right.
Has to drive almost every discussion after that, because if you understand the purpose of the event, is it going to be online? Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be both? From
Right.
there, you can determine, okay, how and what do I need to be able to make this as successful as possible?
Yes.
The world is driven by, can we do more with less? In order to answer that question, you got to answer the previous questions: why and what.
Without a doubt. And the thing is, and again, so you have these 5 W's. So you say why, okay, easy. What needs to be accomplished? What do you want it to, what is the whole purpose of this gathering before I even make the investment of, financial investment, time investment, human capital investment, all of that goes into this, right? Never mind the technology. But then you get, just as we started out this conversation of where, and where is just as important, because fitting the foot in the shoe takes time. And based on the type of company, corporation, association, entity, like a SHRM that Ed brought out, when you're walking around with 27,000 people responsible for that, people plan 5 to 6 years out, versus what's going on in corporate nowadays. And my heart goes out to the planners, which is, hi, we need a meeting in 2 weeks.
Oh, no.
Seriously, or we need a meeting next week. And And now, again, that leads us into, Jay, just what you spoke about is, okay, let's define what kind of meeting this has to be. Let's be realistic about who's coming, who is invited, who needs to be, where are they located, what time zone do I need to do a hybrid meeting, a virtual meeting? Does this need to be in person? Is this a regional meeting? So over the last few years since COVID, the whole uh, planning process in terms of choices, people have been playing in the sandbox. What's going to work? Because do I keep that annual meeting, which has increased in value because live meetings are still the most impactful? Do I have regional meetings? Do I have a combination of both? So all of those have to be defined based on that why and what. And I have to just share with the two of you. So I have over the years created what I call the clipboard theory. Okay. And my clipboard theory, and I taught my students this for years, and I share this with everybody, is this is pages. I have 2 checklists here, and I'll be happy to send it to you, Ed, so that you have it for your audience. One's a planning checklist for meetings, and one is a planning checklist for events. So when I get called, and I've done this through my whole career, regardless of who it is, to plan a meeting or event, I go in with this checklist and go down every concept from defining and what we're talking about now, qualifying and defining the W's, so that we know that we know which direction to take. The W's give us a roadmap of where to start, because where to start is to find a location, right? And a date. Otherwise, what do? And then from there, you can take all your branding, your marketing, all your elements that come with it that we'll speak in subsequent shows. So this clipboard theory, when I mention that to planners, they're like, oh, wonderful. Because sometimes we fly by the seat of our pants and hope that we get it right.
Diane, let me ask you, for the sake of the audience and bringing them up to speed here, define the difference between a meeting and an event.
Oh, good question, Ed. So I'm going to give you the 3 bullet points. In the industry, we'll just say event. An event will mean any type of meeting or event. But when you start macroing it down, so a meeting would be a board of directors, a town hall, a sales meeting, that end, training meeting, that kind of thing. An event would be more the celebratory. So an anniversary, an awards night, a company anniversary. That might be a standalone one day, or a fair, a festival, a parade. That would fit more in the event side.
So the meeting would encompass exhibits.
That would be a conference or a convention. You see, so and that's the differentiation, and that's how the different associations are formed with people. So if you have a corporate meeting, the corporate meeting 9 times out of 10 doesn't come with a trade show element. But if I have an association meeting, or I have a conference or a convention, that would most likely come with an exhibit and trade show component.
So just getting to IQ here, the global business IQ, we're talking about a lot of different things,
Yes.
not just bringing people together for a lunch.
No, not just bringing people together for a lunch. And what we'll do, let's do this in the next show, is we'll show maybe slides that can give people a visual of meetings versus events, or different just different things to understand, different terminology. For example, a conference is bringing together disparate groups who have the same interest. The SHRM convention I always think about convene, and that would be, say, one company like an Aflac Insurance would have a convention. Everyone is there is associated with Aflac in some way, even though they might be employees or agents or some vendor of some sort.
So for the meeting planner, the EA, uh, the the person assigned the task, that's one thing that they have never ever thought about in that context, and they're supposed to manage that. I would think that would cause a heart attack.
Well, you learn to be patient, don't you? One of the things you have to do in any job, especially this one, is to learn how to work with people and to be flexible, right? So yes, but
So
it that's
to what extent is the training, the professional training that the EA will need to have and grasp and get, understand quickly about what behaviors are necessary, what resources do they need to grasp and learn about. And these EAs, I'm going to assume that you're talking about, have very little, if any, hands-on experience doing any of this.
right. Well, I think the first thing that I would do is go back to what our topic for today is just the actual where do I start at the beginning and how do I define these why, what, where, when, and who. And I'll give you an example. For example, I remember this, and I use older examples, so it's not offensive to anyone. But I had a board meeting years ago at a hotel that was a small hotel aligned with a convention center. And when we were checking in to the lobby, there was an unprecedented number of people with prosthetics.
Hmm.
And I remember asking my hotel contact, I said, is there something going on like what? And he said, yes, next door in the convention center is a conference, a trade show on prosthetics and the whole industry there. Okay. Okay, no problem, fine. And our meeting went on. At 12 o'clock that night, the alarm in the hotel went off. I remember this because it was a 12-floor hotel, a 12-floor property. I was on the top floor, and I had, in those days, I had the rooming list of my team and what rooms they were in. We got up, I'm knocking on the doors, everybody get up, we have to get out of the hotel, fire alarm went off. Meanwhile, we start hearing people banging on their doors who are on the 12th floor and the 11th floor of the hotel. These are the people that had the prosthetics, the artificial limbs. Two of the men on my board at the time carried people down. The men started carrying people down 12 flights. Now, we get down, the hotel is swept, we go back up, and then it happened again. So it was a defective alarm. But the point of the story that I'm telling you is that whoever that planner was did not know enough to say to the hotel, I need rooms on the first and second floor. That's it. Period. So knowing your audience, and that's an extreme example, but it's not a far-fetched example of understanding your audience, right?
I'm not sure it's so extreme, Diane. If you think in terms of conferences or conventions, just to use Ed's terminology,
Right.
ADA compliance is something that everybody has to look at, especially when you're outside the United States, because it's not as easy to detect and it
Correct.
isn't necessarily there, but it's something you need to think about, which made me think, and maybe you have an opinion of this, are things changing with the next generation from a tactile perspective, from a technology perspective? Their expectations are different than what our expectations were back Gen X.
Yes. Their expectations are different. And again, in the preliminary stages of a meeting and event, there are now questionnaires that go out. Are there any special needs? Now this goes down, Jay. This goes down to the detail of I have to remember that there are 3 people in wheelchairs coming to the formal night dinner, so that when I set that table and that table of 10, I need to leave one chair out so that it doesn't cause a scene, and that person with the wheelchair can be seamlessly brought to a table. So to your point, it's a sensitivity. On another point, and again, I have no doubt this still happens. At a major insurance client years ago who called me, we're having them, and it was 5,000 people, 5 or 6,000 people in Vegas. He said, well, this is probably going to be my last meeting. I said, why is that? And he said, well, I booked the meeting on such and such a date. And first thing I did is I look at my calendar and I look at holidays, because holidays are different. And you know, Boston, you're both from the Boston area. What does Boston have that no other state has in this country?
Patriots Day.
Thank you. A+. Okay. So that leads, so hold that thought. So in the meantime, this person booked a meeting for 5 or 6,000 Baptists beginning on Easter Sunday. And he was fired after the meeting. Okay. Not a good thing to do. No one realized it. Shame on them is what I say. Right? So you see how much fun it is, Jay? you
Absolutely.
really mean what you said?
And you're getting, and we should be getting more sensitive to
Right.
eating requirements, dietary issues. You're getting more sensitive to different holidays for different cultures. You're getting more and more sensitive to individuals' needs and how they get around. It's really important.
Right. But you can see how it also gets, the choices get smaller and smaller and smaller, taking in all the sensitivities, taking in all the awareness. There's you know, so there's just, you can't always please everyone, but obviously for the obvious things you need to know dates and timing and et cetera, et cetera. And then and again, then the other thing, you know, when you speak about, Ed, you brought up the difference between meetings and events, which was a good call. If Jay said to me, you know, Dianne, I'd like to plan a fundraiser event for my favorite charity. Okay. There's no free lunch in fundraising and nonprofit events, right? It's all one hand washes the other. All right. What you do for me, I do for you. But working at that level for fundraising, I need to do a save the date at least a year to a year and a half out, that people have to have an idea of the date because of their calendars. So when you want this certain level, you cannot go to typical 6 months as you would for a meeting. Oh, we'll have a meeting in 6 months. No. Jay's having a fundraiser. This is Jay's fundraiser. Do you understand what I'm saying? No, you are not going to miss it. And you'll be buying 3 tables.
That's the goal.
And your boss will speak about how wonderful he is.
That's the goal.
So, right. So there's that kind of event, you know, that kind of situation too. So when you start defining who, and realize the people, and again, just to your point, we have 5 generations who we're working with now in a typical company, right? Who they are, what their needs are. If you're in an older property, you don't often have ramps grandfathered in. If you're going to castles and you're going to older buildings, 99%, 95% are accommodating right now. But these were all issues that planners had to sort out. So the where is not just about the sensitivity to who's attending, the timing, you know, what the topic is, because that leads me to the reason there are airport hotels. Companies will say, fly into O'Hare, have a day's meeting, and then everyone is there. They fly out. It's easy. That's why airport hotels.
Wonderful Hilton there.
Yeah, beautiful Hilton. It's a huge Hilton. I'll meet you there one day. So, you know, so that's where this comes from. There's a lot of questions. So Ed, going back to when you say the EA or the admin or the department head who's charged with hosting a meeting and has to delegate it, very often they don't go through that process to really clarify and qualify all those details, because those details, when they're understood, basically start the logistics and the execution process, and also align with what the strategic goals are, which is really ultimately what the planner is responsible for. I'm responsible for making your vision and these objectives come to fruition.
I'll give you a pro tip that goes along with that.
Okay.
So logistically, you've got to be able to pick the location that makes sense for everything that you've been talking about, Diane. You want a pro tip, you want to blow away the organizer, tie the location to the meeting objectives. If you can find a way to do that with an event, with a separate discussion around something, that makes you a superstar.
Well, it does. And then I'll bring up one other aspect with this, is perception, because here's the other part of that. So if we all worked for the same company and we just did a major layoff of 25% of the people, and the board meeting or the sales meeting or the management team is now having a meeting, am I going to book a 5 to 7 star property for that? Or do I have to be sensitive to the perception of the money being spent? Now, let's go to the flip side to that. When COVID happened and when different economic times have happened where, luxury properties, 5-star properties, and we all know who they are, they were negotiating room rates that were the same as the local hotel down the street. But planners couldn't take them because of perception. So it didn't have anything to do with the money being spent and the budget investment. It had to do with perception, that everybody went to, different properties in, I don't want to name different cities, but, B level, what we would call a B or C level city versus a major. Just, that makes sense to you? Yeah.
It absolutely does. I will tell you, if you can find that B or C level city and find that gem and make it differentiating, again,
Right.
pro tip, you're a superstar, right?
Yeah.
Having a good time in Vegas, other than the perception issues, easy.
Right.
Having a good time in Spring Creek, Idaho,
Yeah.
also easy, but you got to know some things.
You have to know different things, every destination has its pros and its cons. But again, from a meeting point of view, I use the term the theater of meetings and events, the theater of it all, because you're putting on a show to some extent, but you have to make all the pieces come together. And I never wanted to be a superstar. I only wanted to do my job. And the pressure that comes with the responsibility, I remember I had a few clients, and I remember saying to my colleagues, we would talk and they would say, "Oh, how fortunate you are." And I say, "No, I go into the CEO's office and the CMO is standing there, and they both say, 'Dianne, take over. You're in charge of the event. We trust you.'" That's not for the faint of heart.
That's pressure.
That's pressure. That's pressure. We trust you. Is you're responsible for the budget, you're responsible for the logistics, and that leads me into the topic of budget and the effect of budgets on all the choices that we're making. Because when you're designing, I mean, of course you have to work with a budget. And I love this question. I love this question that I used to say to my clients, well, what is your budget? Well, we don't have a budget. I said, oh, and then so I say, okay, well, that's great. So let's start with a groundwork of $500,000. Oh, no, we're not thinking $500,000. I say, well, what are you thinking? So basically it would have to be playing games. At least give me a range of 200.
And then they say, I don't know.
And then they say, I don't know. And so let's go back to the how did I deal with the I don't know? I dealt, and this is where the full circle comes in and this is where the business aspect comes in. You've all done this. You can't start planning without research and surveys that were done the year prior. Or I'll say to my customer, give me, where did you have, if you've had this meeting in the past, name the 3 destinations you've had it in. And if they tell me, oh, well, we've had it at, you know, the plaza or this hotel, and then we were here, and then we were in the conference room of the office last year, I say, well, okay, so tell me the story of what happened. Well, the first year our CEO wanted everyone to come from around the world and make an impression. Okay. Second year we had cutbacks. Okay. Third year we really cut it back and only had critical people there in the office conference room, and we had catering in-house. So that tells me that there's a lot going on. And I'm not going to be unrealistic with what I recommend or what I start bringing up, because if I bring up certain aspects, I'm leaving them open questions so that you can fill me in more of what the reality is that I'm dealing with. So to gain that trust is asking the right questions.
So all of this points to the need for a formal training program
That's
and the certificate at the end. The certificate is like you've achieved this knowledge building thing. But the idea is that there's first of all understanding the depth and the width and the scope of what the job entails. It's not for untrained people.
no, it's not, Ed. And the thing is that above all, meetings reflect the company's philosophy, reflect who a company is.
And that's the risk.
And
Yeah.
that's the risk. It's not only your staff, it's all your stakeholders, your board, your customers, your clients, your prospective customers, if that's the issue, your competition. And again, we all know one another in this industry, and because the industry has evolved so much, it's a young industry. It's just about 50 years old, but still it's a cousin or a grandchild to advertising and public relations, isn't it?
Yep.
Because it's all about delivering a message. A true meeting delivers a message.
It's media.
That's it. It's a
The,
meeting.
the big umbrella is up top is the media.
That's
But okay,
exactly
what
right.
does all this mean?
What does it all mean? And so the
Right.
accountability to all of your stakeholders is first and foremost. The most important thing to the planner, which I know we'll touch on in future shows, is the responsibility of safety and security. That is numero uno. And again, that I think we'll cover in the future with sourcing and site selection of working with directors of security. But getting back to today, I want to understand right from the onset, from a strategic point of view, that the objectives and goals that you've outlined, that I understand to be a certain way, are in alignment with your expectations. And that's what makes a successful meeting. It can be held in a park. It can be held at the most luxurious property. If it's designed to meet those to meet those expectations.
So not to be too dramatic about this, but the United Health Care Corporation, this huge company, and that happens to be my insurer. But uh, they were holding a big meeting in New York on 6th Avenue at the Hilton, Grand Hilton, beautiful
Right.
place. The CEO is walking down the street and some maniac comes up and shoots him dead.
Right. Right.
And the meeting went on.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that kind of
Yes.
craziness? And how do you control that meeting after that? I mean, and then never mind just that, but the whole security angle and insurance and what, Jay?
Uh,
This craziness.
well, you know, uh, yes, I can imagine it, unfortunately. And when it did happen, the first thing, I mean, aside from my empathy, obviously, to the situation, the first thing I thought about is the planner and the security team. And this is, we will go into depth more of this under security and risk management. In my career, I've had 4 people die at events. And the short answer is the show must go on. So you have to, you address it. It affects the meeting, obviously, but you sadly, in this case, the business, the meeting had to go on for whatever reasons it did. So, you know, every situation is different, depending on the size and scope of it. And, but yes, Ed, so you bring up, what you bring up is the responsibility is enormous to plan. Planning is not something that is because you've cooked a Thanksgiving dinner that you can take care of meetings and events. Now, that being said, there are internal internal meetings or something that can be done that require logistics, book a room, order lunch, have AV. But funny enough, one of my personal friends who's a businessman, he said to me, he said, Dianne, you think ordering lunch? He said, I always order too much food or not enough food. I never know how much food to order. So even that comes down to understanding the formulas with that. And that all affects the budget. And so at the bottom line is you're accountable for money, aren't you? Like how much you spend, how much you don't spend, and what the return is. And that's what is always over someone's head in the choices that they make in terms of designing the meeting. So yeah.
So we can go on a few more minutes, or we can end this thing in 6 minutes. But uh, I just want to add this. In Silicon Valley, there's a lot of choices. There's a lot of companies, and there's a lot of meetings going on. And for years, I've produced meetings there. And one of the favorite places I've selected um, was in the right location at the right time and the right atmosphere. And it's on Castro Street. I don't know whether you're familiar with Mountain View. Okay. And within a 10 square mile area, you have the headquarters of LinkedIn and Google, Apple, and a few others. Okay. And so Mountain View is the little town, right, where everything's adjacent. Sunnyvale, Palo Alto is right next door. And San Francisco Airport is a short ride. And San Jose Airport is a distance short, but it takes forever to get there. So, Mountain View, there's an Italian restaurant, family-run Italian restaurant called Don Giovanni. And they have a side room. They have the restaurant, bar, and then they have a side room, which is nothing fancy. It sort of reminded me the first time, and they haven't changed it since, and it's been like 20 years, but it's like a playroom in elementary school in terms of the art and graphics on the walls. And it's just a table and chairs, and you know, but but on the walls they have like kindergarten style drawings of the campuses that house these few companies that I just mentioned and some of the scenes. And of course, their logos are all over the place. Okay. And it's within this environment that I held uh, meetings, an event that included lunch, cocktail, uh, the meetings with audio visual and reception at the end. Okay, all within this Italian restaurant. Everybody could order anything they wanted within, as long as it was pasta and some other stuff. But you can get a red or a white or a Coca-Cola or whatever. But so it was fairly limited by design. But the atmosphere and the meeting intercommunication skills were premium. That was what it was all about. That is more fun than doing a big corporate event with exhibits. But this size meeting, and one that I'm planning on doing again, if I can, in the same way, sometime in the fall, most productive, most effective. People remember it to this day.
How many people?
I kept it under 50.
So I was going to say about 50. So,
Yeah, even
so
less.
again, the type of gathering that you just described can be done within a big meeting. So you have breakouts and you have people
That's
going
right.
off
That's
having their
right.
own.
Yeah,
And what you did is also not offer a lot of choices. You
right.
know, red, white, soft drinks, done. No time for like 18 different ingredients in your coffee. Just coffee.
Well, they can go up
I
and
know.
get it.
I'm,
Yeah.
I know. I'm teasing you. But the thing
Yeah.
is, my point is that the focus was on people, and I'll give you this on that note. Since we're talking about the W's and qualifying things with all the questions, I was producing an event that was all high level, all senior level people. And right up front, I knew it, and my client knew it, that there was X amount of dollars in the budget. Where do you put the focus? And so again, at the very onset, and this is something that you have to just know and learn, is if I have this level, and this is the objective for everyone to just come together to talk, to have an entertaining evening, really no business discussed. I don't care about the centerpieces. I don't care about the linen. I care about the wine and choosing the right wines, and I care about the menu, because the people who are at this level, I'm going to presume, have fairly discerning tastes. So I'm not going to serve them the chicken and the Cabernet and the Chardonnay that I serve the 12,000 people at the bigger events. And again, that comes under qualifying the meeting, clarifying the goals, and keeping it in perspective to what the ultimate objectives and goals are. Yeah. Like, how do I choose that? And the location. So all of that comes under the beginning, and that's where the planner can then take from Peter, give to Paul in terms of balancing the budget. So I'll leave you with that, because there's no there, and that goes back to what I said at the beginning. The industry uses the term deliberately planned meetings and events, and that's because they've been qualified. I use the example of, advertising and designing a print ad, designing a PR campaign. Nothing moves forward without understanding the strategy. And then, to your point, the visual and all the elements can bring it together to make it come to life.
So we did a meeting in Ernst and Young, Metro New York. In fact, we did two meetings this past year, in person with a video component. in Hoboken, across the river from Wall Street. Amit Banker was my host.
Wonderful partner.
Yeah, and Heather Seacrest also. Yeah, and
Good
a
friend of
couple.
mine and a wonderful partner.
Yeah, and Diane, that's the meeting that I had you speak at.
Yes.
And yeah, you flew in from Chicago just for that. And that's where you had this impromptu meeting, um, which we won't get into right now, unless you want to. But don't forget, we're on television.
All above, it was all above board. It was a good meeting.
With Heather and Ahmed, I would expect nothing less.
That's right.
Yeah, it was really good for me. I was really honored to be able to do that. Um, and so,
The thing, I will say this because Jay's like, what are they not saying? It was very interesting for me to speak about, to speak with the group that were in corporate relocation and HR and the dynamics of what they're challenged with people being transferred to different locations and having to assimilate. And that's such a dichotomy, like a same thing as meetings and events, right? How do you get people to
One of
talk?
the hardest things to do is understand from a cultural perspective. It's one of the reasons why assignments fail, and that's what you're talking about, is taking an individual that crosses borders.
Right.
Amit usually focuses on the financial industry. Heather focuses more on goods and services, but the movement of people is generally the same. How do you get an individual into a new location and understand the culture and understand how they can be effective while still managing a process of movement? It's a very difficult process.
and the theme, and the reason why that was allowed in at that particular time was they had just released the survey results, the EY survey results of which was
Mobility Reimagined would have been
worldwide, right? And they were presenting the findings. That was the purpose of that meeting.
Right.
Fantastic.
Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. I'm so sorry, but I'm late for a call.
Yeah, thank you.
This
And
Thank you,
we'll
Jay.
keep you informed about the next. And Diane, this has been a great session for me.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. I look forward to the next one. All right.
Thank you. We'll be
All
in
right.
touch. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.